You're listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast.
Hello, I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is Rick.Terrien, author of Ageless Startup. Start a business at any age. Rick is a career entrepreneur and has made 234 microloans to entrepreneurs in 83 different countries and territories. And over 90% of those loans are made in support of food and agricultural entrepreneurs. Welcome, Rick. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and you found a very interesting factoid there. Yeah, I'm very proud of it. Thank you. That's not on the book stuff. You had to dig deep to find that. Thank you.
Well, it seems that you are a very generous person. When did you find your passion to help entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I led a life of entrepreneurship for the first half of my career. Started several businesses. During the last recession, I took a job. I sold a business that I'd gotten to 10 years old. It's now at a little over 20. And during the recession, I took a job doing economic development, and I didn't even know what that meant. But I got the job, and I went out and began learning it, and I focused on creating as many small startups as I possibly could. And I had the time of my life, but I learned a lot about what hinders people from taking this on and even exploring entrepreneurship in the second half of life. And I wanted to make a contribution to fix that if I could.
Great. Well, it's scary starting a business.
So, Matt, you're right. So here's a different take on that, though. It is scary starting a business, but in this day and age, and post-pandemic, and yet another recession upon us, I posit that it's scarier not to have your own business. It is not that hard to actually start one. You don't want to do it to have to pay the rent or buy shoes for the kids. That's not what we're talking about here. But the ability to start something small and carefully wake it up and bring it to life and learn the ropes of sending invoices and cashing checks and paying taxes and all the rest of that is a skill set that is profoundly important. We all need to get a lot more resilient. And I'm going to suggest that people in the second half of life need to lead that. There's nothing wrong with entrepreneurship for young people, right? Every magazine cover has a 20-year-old billionaire on it.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks that's the full story and full stop, but it's not. It's actually just the opposite. Most startups in the United States are started by people 45 and above.
That's amazing.
It is, yeah. You know, the other day I was listening to an interview with Mark Cuban, and he said now is the perfect time to start a business because so many businesses are retooling and having to change the way they're doing business. Now's a perfect time to jump in and to already have your business ready for, pandemic ready.
I couldn't agree more. And the other part of that is that we've got a whole raft of new problems on our table now. And that's what entrepreneurs do. They solve problems. And if you can't find enough problems right now, you're not looking very hard.
So, Rick, tell us how the idea of writing the book started.
The actual writing itself started as, I'm not going to call it therapy, but it was something akin to that. I started writing essays when I was deep into my entrepreneurial life. I was still working on a startup that I was building with some teammates. It was hard and difficult, but we were succeeding. And I wanted to put my ideas down about how that one was emerging as a small business. And I lived on the road. I was putting 60, 70,000 miles a year on my car. We had customers all over the world in Africa and China. And it was a profoundly complex business, but I felt that I needed to document it. And every Friday night I got done, and before I would open the first beer, I would make myself write an essay. And it wouldn't be long, but it was something that it was profound to me that week. And little by little, year by year, I accumulated more and more and more of those people. I was putting it on a public blog. By the end, before I stopped it, it was probably had 5,000 people a week reading it.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
That's a great following.
It was pretty fun, and I learned, all the drills of digital publishing and getting the photos right and all of that. I ran into another startup after I'd sold that business. I moved to the economic development, and then we started another one, another new enterprise, and it was just so complicated. I had to drop off for a while, and I let that blog go. But the writing was all there. It persists, and that's a good tool. It doesn't go away when it's on the internet. I didn't even have to look for it. I could just go find it. And I spent a year or so with an in-house editor, my wife, and an English major, no less.
Great.
And,
handy.
Correct. And we assembled those essays by taping cards to a wall in an unused office in our house and moving them around and seeing what order they'd go in and rewriting where I needed to a little bit. And we assembled what we thought was a pretty competent representation of that writing over the course of 6, 7, 8 years into a single format that we thought represented the most value that we could give to a reader who might be in the second half of life and might be considering entrepreneurship. And how could I lay that out and bring them in a structured way? So I built the book around 3 pieces, 3 steps into it, which is give yourself permission, then do your planning, and then build a professional practice around it. But for older folks, the hardest thing all of us that work in this business know is older folks especially just won't give themselves permission to explore entrepreneurship. So this seemed like a safe way to introduce the subject.
Well, I think that's interesting because people giving permission to become authors, you need to say to yourself, I can do this. It's funny how through life we have to give permission to ourselves. It's just interesting how we are as humans.
Right.
I
It's
guess.
so easy to talk yourself out of something.
Right.
There's an excuse for everything and very few motivational things to get you to take a step you haven't taken before. And so that was the motivation, is to try to get something in clear and simple language, not from an academic or somebody who's made, billions of dollars in the stock market or whatever. This is just everyday people starting businesses. And we've been doing that as a culture, a human culture, for 10,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Taking care of each other, nurturing each other's families, and solving problems for each other. It's not like this is brand new to 21st century North America.
Yeah.
So it's just how you fit that in, and then how do you manage expectations and how you plan it. And my plan is to go slow, take as much time as you possibly can. It's a little bit opposite of what most people say, is that entrepreneurship is a big rush and you need to hurry. And I'm just the opposite. I want you to start smart, and I want you to go slow.
Great. Well, I like the vision of you and your wife putting the blogs up and trying to figure out what order they should go in. I don't know why that visually seems like a pretty neat idea. And maybe if an author is having some troubles visualizing, like maybe they're writing this part or that part, but how does this all fit together? That might be a nice aspect for them to think about.
It was a good tool for us, and it's surprising. We ended up with a professional publishing company that published the book, but most of those cards on the wall, if you close your eyes and squint, I can still see them in the book.
Yeah.
The editor made me fill in a whole lot of blanks and asked for new writing and asked for things to be rewritten, but the original structure held in place fairly well.
And how did you find your publisher?
Well, I studied everything I could on the subject. Being an entrepreneur lifelong, I wanted to do everything myself. But I'm in the middle of another startup. It's another 60, 70 hour a week thing that I'm in love with. And I knew I couldn't do it justice. And if I needed to do independent publishing on my own, I would. But I wanted to first try the route of traditional publishing. And so that pathway leads through agents. So I got a book out of the library on how to find an agent. And I copied down, I scrolled through it, found as many nonfiction agents as I could that matched up with what I thought the book represented. And I wrote to all of them and got a grand total of nothing back.
Oh, geez.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
But there was one guy I really was interested in, and he was the fellow that wrote that book on how to find an agent. And that is his job. He's an agent, and it's Jeff Herman of the Jeff Herman Agency. And I wrote back to Jeff, and we traded a couple more emails, and he took the project on.
Oh,
and
great.
I was delighted, and he represented the book to his contacts in the publishing industry, and we ran it by several majors, and it was a really interesting process that I hopefully got a little better at each time. And then the one that bit was the one that Jeff had originally said that he thought would be our best fit. And he was right, and it's been a great publisher, and that's Entrepreneur Press.
And is that related to the magazine?
It is. They publish the magazine. They publish business books. They have a fabulous digital profile. And all of those together have been offered to me as a service from them as a publishing company. Not to mention that I got, in my humble opinion, the best editor on the planet.
Well, you must have been thrilled.
Well, I was, and it's the first time through, so I initially didn't recognize how lucky I am.
Yes.
And this is not a traditional score. But I'm running with it, and I've made these wonderful friends within the publishing company. Again, my editor couldn't have been better. She made the book a better outcome significantly. You know, I was growling and grumbling at her through the whole process. She didn't hear me, but she made the book a much better outcome in the end. She really polished it into something that I'm really proud of.
That's wonderful.
Excellent. That's what editors do, right?
I guess. She's my one editor that I've ever had, and other than my wife putting the things up on the wall, it's my editor, Jen Dorsey.
Great. So have you thought about doing an audiobook version?
Well, here's where a real professional publisher like this comes in, is though all of those services are just being made for me. They put a Kindle edition together, an ebook edition, which I think is going to have a really big splashy thing on Amazon in the near future that I can't talk about yet. They have negotiated for an audiobook. The pandemic sort of put everything on hold, but they are fully expecting an audiobook to come from it.
Great.
And they just negotiated I don't think it's done, but it's apparently just needing signatures, the first international edition.
Wow. This is wonderful.
It's taking off.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like your whole life you've been taking opportunities, and that's wonderful. And that's what we're trying to motivate people to do too, because you have taken a lot of opportunities, but now as an author, you're finding even more opportunities coming towards you.
As a longtime entrepreneur, this is one of the best ways I've ever seen to open new doors.
Yeah.
Since this book has come out, I've made probably hundreds of new friends in professional settings, and people that will take your call, and people who will return your emails, and it's a completely different format. And so it's incumbent on me then to make, as you just said, Leah, make the most of those opportunities.
So tell us a little bit about promoting the book.
I will say among the best pieces of promo support that I've received has come directly from the publisher. So somebody like this that's in the game, that is working on multiple platforms, not only were they able to publish the book in hard copy and get that together, but they've got a big, important digital publishing arm where they're cranking out really focused, important articles on a wide range of subjects important to entrepreneurs. They initially went back in and repackaged some of the book itself, and under some chapter titles, republished them as short vignettes, entry-level essays into the book.
Where are they available? Are those for sale, or are those just put out as like a promotional, hey, if you like this, check out the whole book?
Correct. They're put out as freestanding articles, first of all. So I've got an author page at Entrepreneur Media, and it lists I don't know, we're probably at 7 or 8 or 9 right now. The book's only been out about 8 weeks. So they put together 5 or 6 articles like that, and you can just search them.
Rick, when it comes to publishing, what's the best piece of advice anybody gave you about writing a book?
My experience of working through an agent and a publisher is not typical, but I'm really, really been impressed at the level of work they're doing and the profoundly better promotional capability that they have that I could have ginned up on my own. So I would, if you have the time to go through that process, I suggest that that's a worthy path. I can't speak to independent publishing because I didn't do it, but I suspect it's a perfectly wonderful way to do things. But I've got a job, I've got a busy job, and getting this level of support for the book while I do the day job stuff, I don't think I could do it. I certainly nowhere near at the level that they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's wonderful. I mean, it just seems like it all fell in the right place.
Who could ever say that timing is good for a pandemic?
Yeah, yeah.
But especially for older workers, there's a significant problem on the horizon. I mean, there was ageism, prior to this. There's been ageism for 1,000 years, but that's always been difficult. But right now, all these businesses are going to be contracting. As they reopen, they're going to be much leaner, and they're going to be looking at older workers and the higher salaries they carry. But it's unfortunate they're also going to see a medical risk potentially. It's sad, but it's a fact of life. So how older workers can transition from working for somebody else to working for themselves is the goal of that book.
Well, what do you think is the one hidden pitfall about starting a business that people don't know about?
It takes longer than you think. And frankly, it should if you do it right. But too many people use entrepreneurship as just as a ladder to get at money. And it doesn't work like that. You have to solve real problems for real human beings, and you have to add value to their lives. And you've got to do it in an appropriate way that's affordable for all involved and that you make a profit at. And that's a lot of nuance. Mm-hmm. So expecting to go fast because you read it in a business magazine that some 25-year-old made $1 billion and sold it, and it was some goofy thing you would never have imagined that you could, I could do that too. Well, no, you can't. And no, you probably shouldn't. There's nothing wrong with that level of business and entrepreneurship. It just doesn't represent the biggest slice of the pie by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm back to that go slow and plan it correctly.
So I shouldn't quit my job and
you should transition. And there is a term of art called phased retirements. And I'm pushing this as a strategy for corporations. If they are going to be letting older workers go, don't just pull the rug, give them a year to transition. And, I worked with a lot of older industries when I lived out in the Midwest. I'm from Wisconsin. And I watched a lot of trade associations every year that I was helping support. They were just bleeding out retirees, people who were 62 and 63 and 64. They would hit some mandatory retirement age, and they would all say bye to their friends and wish we could say, well, this is a whole industry walking out the door every year.
Mm-hmm. With a lot of knowledge.
It's knowledge and it's know-how, and it's most important, maybe it's their networks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, mm-hmm.
And and the things that they know that don't work. And it just seemed crazy to me. Now, some significant portion of those people are going to want to just go to the McDonald's and be grumpy about politics. But there's a whole lot of people that would love to continue to support the industries that they came from or communities that they love.
The Author Inside You podcast is brought to you by
Scribophile. You can find it at scribophile.com. It's a fantastic writing community where writers of all genres come together to support and critique each other's work.
There are writer groups where you'll find like-minded writers, or you can even start your own writing group. Or there are forums where you can meet other members to discuss all things writing, ask for and give help, or talk about life in general.
Another great aspect of Scribophile is that you can send private messages within the web page. So say you join a writers group and you become friends with some of the writers within the group, you can actually send private messages back and forth and not have to do it via email. So other members can learn more about you, what your style is like, and gain some fans.
With all the wonderful resources on scribophile.com, now is the time to make your book a reality. There is no reason not to start writing your book.
So if you're looking for a beta reader or some like-minded writers, check out scribophile.com.
There's a lot of interesting things you're doing. From what I understand, if someone, let's say, wants to start a cookie business, you have a place where they could maybe rent by an hour to bake, a commercial area.
So you have been looking at my resume.
Yes, yeah.
I have been working in small-scale artisan food manufacturing. And this used to be called food processing. We all love to eat fresh produce, and wouldn't it be wonderful? But, you know, I was living in Wisconsin at the time. It might as well be Siberia. How much fresh stuff are you going to get in January?
Right.
In fact, there's so much waste because of those systems that 40% of the food that's grown never sees a consumer.
What a shame.
So the idea is to create new systems of food manufacturing and do it smarter, better, you know, cut the additives, make the packaging smarter, all of that. And so, yeah, I did build out a system around that for a while in Wisconsin. And I was recruited here to Pittsburgh to join what is turning out to be the most exciting startup of my life. And that's a group of us together. And this is a model I can use in the book. A group of us, each with their own small company, came together, looked over a project, made a proposal to a convener. In this case, it was one of the major utilities in Pittsburgh. And they accepted that. And these three small companies came together to start what has become, the name of it is Food 21. And it is a system to build a 21st century regional food system, not an industrialized global international food system, but something that can work on a regional level. And so that's what I'm up to my neck in here in Pittsburgh now. And yes, Leah, to answer your question, we do have those systems in place. Not so much for people to come in and make their own foods, which is a perfectly wonderful idea. There are many of those kind of models around. The next hardest part is for the three of us to say, we would like to have our grandma's jam manufactured for us. And so that we can all keep our day jobs rather than, you know, working until 7 or 8 at night and then going off and stirring the pot till 3 a.m. That's the missing, most broken part of the system now. And so that is what I'm working on. But the ability to tie that back to the book, because it is what I tell my entrepreneurs when I can get to talk to them directly or through these articles, is that you don't want to start a multi-person business and hire all kinds of team members. You want to start a one-person business, and you want to wrap a legal shell around yourself, an LLC. But you don't want this to be a Lone Ranger event either, where you're just out saving the world. You need to find partners. Nobody knows enough to solve all of the problems. But if you can put a pickup game together, where, as we did here in Pittsburgh, one guy came in from the Twin Cities, one guy came in from Pennsylvania, one person was strong in finance, one was really strong in indoor farming. We put together a package that I think will last a long time, although those principles will probably, by and large, including me, drift off and reform for other new projects.
Wow.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, very exciting.
That's the way to do entrepreneurship in the 21st century.
You're going to get all kinds of entrepreneurs going on. So congratulations on all of this.
Well, thank you. And congratulations to what you're doing. This is inspiring, and it's a wonderful way to introduce people to writing. I have one gentleman who wants to have his specialty within that new Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs to be teaching writing as entrepreneurship. So
Great.
it'll be from soup to nuts, and we'll put your podcast right at the top of that list.
Oh,
Why, thank you.
Thank you.
There are plenty of people who make a living writing, and there's a lot to be written on the internet.
Yeah, that's right, and there's a lot yet that's certainly needed. We're in strange new territory now, and there's lots of new writing that can get done, fiction and nonfiction.
Well, Rick, before we wrap up here, do you have any advice for somebody who's thinking about writing a book?
I think they should start right now. I think they should quit thinking about it, quit talking about it, get crappy first drafts out there, push the send button, put it on a blog. You know, it doesn't matter if it's, you'll see if the punctuation's misplaced or you want to change a word later, but just do it. It's so easy to put this off and to think about it and decide what you're going to do next. It's just like entrepreneurship. You want to start small and you want to start smart, but the most important thing is to start right now.
Great.
And you did that. You started small, and look, those small projects ended up into a book.
Exactly right. And one I'm really, really proud of.
Wonderful. And where can our listeners purchase your book?
So I've got a website, which is ageless-startup.com. ageless-startup.com. There is an order page there. If the usual suspects are all listed, it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and a whole bunch of that crowd. But it's also on Indie Books and Bookshop. And so if you want to support your local independent bookstore,
Great.
you can order it through these national platforms and support your local bookstore at the same time.
Excellent.
Great. We have a link to that in our show notes.
Oh, excellent. Good. Yep, I'm very proud of that piece.
Rick, what's the best way for our listeners to contact you?
Yeah, the book website has some contact forms on it, but if you don't mind, I'd be glad to leave my email.
Sure.
It's Rick, R-I-C-K, .terrien, T-E-R-R-I-E-N, like nickel, rick.terrien@gmail.com.
Excellent. Well, Rick, thanks for joining us today. You've been a wealth of knowledge.
I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm so grateful for the great work you guys are doing.
If you have any feedback on our podcast, a great way to contact us is on our Facebook page. You can search for The Author Inside You on Facebook.
We'd love to hear from you if you have any suggestions or just to say hello.
And until next time,
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.